which is doing something. Yeah, we are.
Fantastic.
Zoe?
Great. Hi, my name is Zoe Braiterman. For those of you who don't know me, I chair the Women in AppSec Committee and OWASP NYC chapter leader. And I'm here to introduce 5 wonderful panelists who are project leaders within OWASP, ASVS, Top 10, ZAC, Proactive Controls and Vulnerability Management Guide. And so part of the reason I'm having this panel is to encourage you all to join OWASP projects and the community and really engage and see your interest in all the opportunities. So I'm gonna, so when each of you answer your first question, I guess also give a brief intro, your name, your location or chapter, and your project. So first, how did you first enter OWASP/AppSec, and what inspired you to start your projects?
Who's that addressed to?
Each of you. So I guess, Andrew, you can start.
Okay. So I've been doing, excuse the printer noise in the background, I've been doing application security in one way or another since 1998. And I had sort of, you know, we're aware of SQL injection, a few things like that through Frac. But web application security itself, we had to discover everything ourselves. So when OWASP got going and, you know, they started documenting the controls and, you know, sorts of attacks, I knew more attacks than were in the original developer guide. So I started writing them down. That's how I got involved in my first project, was the OWASP developer guide. And that was in late 2001, early 2002.
Great. So how about Katy?
Okay, so on my side, I was working as development manager at the time, and then as part of my role to deliver software, I was also asked to start looking into the security aspect of the software and start securing the software. And as everyone else, I started looking into the OWASP Top 10, but those would not help me and my team, especially that we had pretty tight deadlines. And that's where I started and found the newly released project, which is the OWASP Top 10 Proactive Controls project. And I joined in 2015 the project alongside Jim Bird and Jim Manico, and started working on that project. And this is how I got involved, by looking for something that I could use on a daily basis with my development teams and still deliver some sort of secure software or a more secure software.
Awesome. How about Simon?
Hi, so my name's Shaun Bennett. I'm one of the ZAP project leaders, and I'm based in Manchester. So I was actually a developer. I led a small development team quite a few years ago now, and we developed an online service that was considered security critical for the company. So I insisted they got an external pen test, and got a couple of guys in. I remember, you know, talked to them, gave them all the information we could about the service, gave them test accounts, set them up in a room, and walked in an hour later to see how they were doing, only to find that one of them was logged in on the admin console as myself. We hadn't given them my credentials. That was after an hour. And they hadn't actually, that wasn't a vulnerability in my software. They just cracked the entire company's SSO single sign-on system. So that was quite impressive. The report that came out looked like a car crash. I now found out it wasn't actually that bad, and I've delivered worse reports myself. But it made me realize that I needed to learn more about security. And so I started playing around with security tools, and I wanted to find a tool that I could use to do some security testing, do some automation so that we would pick up things, and also to help myself learn, because I'm okay, you know, reading stuff, but I prefer learning by doing. I prefer getting stuck in coding. So I looked around for an open source security tool that I could get involved in, and there wasn't really one. There were some open source tools, but they'd mostly been abandoned, and there was no real community around any of them. So in the end, I kind of bit the bullet and forked a tool called Paros that had been abandoned some years before, and released it as Zap and offered it to OWASP. It got accepted. So that was in 2010, and that's how I got started, really.
Been soaring ever since. Wow. Okay, Liz.
Okay, unmuted. Hey guys, my name is Liz Frenz. I'm a leader of OWASP Vulnerability Management Guide. I speak of myself as a cybersecurity enthusiast since Melissa or I Love You viruses. I worn so many hats, it's just absolutely senseless to list them all. I ended up doing quality control. That's how I familiarized myself with OWASP top 10 controls, obviously, and started looking for people, collaborators, on how to enter into security community and have a security something title on me. It went fairly well. After that, I did some org project with OWASP, helping other project leaders, and it was absolutely, totally failure project about identities and accountability. Something in OWASP community was not well received, but I still was pushing. And finally, I think it was in a Brooklyn OWASP chapter meetup when I was speaking about what I do for a living, that I'm doing vulnerability management, yada, 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 yada. And somebody said, oh, you have to present about that. I said, okay. I made a presentation in 2017 and I received, it was like, crowd of 27 people on WebEx. And then somebody asked me for slides and somebody asked me for slides again. And somebody said, probably you should make a project of it. Okay. So that's how it started. My project is probably the youngest of all the leaders. Just been released in June 6th, and that's how I roll.
Awesome. Awesome. And Jim?
Hey, so I'm Jim Manico. I'm a former board member of OWASP. I participated and I lead about a half dozen projects. I participate about a dozen projects. I've spoken at dozens and taught at dozens of OWASP conferences. And I'm just a big fan of the foundation for over a decade now.
Nice. Wow, 12, okay. So what are some noteworthy experiences and leading opportunities and learning opportunities you've had from working with your collaborators on the projects? I guess same order, starting with Andrew.
Okay. I think, honestly, in terms of experiences, I've donated a lot of time to OWASP over the last 20 years, or nearly 20 years. But the thing that's really paid off for me is meeting everybody and working with, some of the luminaries of that field. Initially with the Mark Curfews and, some of the original founders. Then meeting up with Jeff Williams and Dave Wickers, that was how I got introduced to Aspect Security, and therefore also Jim. And Jim's first few days at Aspect Security were very rough, and I'll leave him to tell the story because, quite frankly, it's not mine to tell. But fundamentally, I felt bad about that first interaction because it could have been make or break. And that sort of told me that, and I'll probably touch on this in any future question, is, we should approach the community with love, not glee or, saying, we are better than everybody else. So the people that I've, formed lasting friendships with are all positive people who contributed massively to our community. And so, when I took over the OWASP Top 10 2017, that was when the community was at its lowest. And I really felt sorry for Dave and Jeff at that point. But then I got to meet some additional people who are now co-leaders on the OWASP Top 10. And I now count them as friends. And quite frankly, it's the friendships you make, the community you have, and the positive impact you have. And, you know, for me, it's been life-changing. I've lived in America twice now because of my work with OWASP. So yes, I've donated a lot of my time and given a lot to this community, but it's more than repaid everything back to me. So that's what I think about it. So I'd love to hear Jim's Genesis story aspect, but I'll leave him to discuss it.
Awesome. So I guess
Hey, can I go out of order since Andrew
yes,
is?
because you were called upon.
I've been a developer for about 25 years, though. I started as like a Java and web developer in the late 90s. I've just been writing code for a long time. So I took a job with Aspect, first time in a security crowd, and an application from a previous job, a Java enterprise app, and a pretty serious one that had been sunsetted. I grabbed that code and brought it. It's a dead code base. I'm not like not stealing anything. So we're taking a look as an exercise at this code base to learn about security. This is something that I wrote, and these folks ripped it up, found a lot of vulnerabilities. And I'm like getting a little upset because they're like laughing. They're going through my code base, like gleefully laughing and like hacking my stuff. So I'm like, I took a step out of the room, and as I'm walking back, I hear a lot of people like laughing at my code. And I'm like, you know what? I'm done with security. So I packed up my shit and started leaving. And Jeff caught me. He says, wait. And I'm like, I'm a Sicilian American. Like I try to be nice. I'll cook for people all day long. But at a certain point, I'm like, Bafangu, I'm out of there. So like at a certain point, a lot of the security guys are gleefully laughing. Andrew was like the loudest. Bafangu, Andrew. So they're laughing at my code. And I like walked out of there. So I was so furious. And Jeff, and I was ready to like burn the building down. I would never do that. I'm a mature adult, but I was really upset at everyone. And I'm walking out, and Jeff's like, "Come on, Jim, give this one more chance. We'll be more respectful." And Jeff calmed me down. Said, "This could be a big opportunity for you, Jim. Just wait. What happens to you if you learn about security?" I went back in there, and everybody was like, "Sorry, Jim." Everyone's like, "Real," and it was funny because the rest of the day, people were like, in this exceptionally excellent code base, I was shocked to find a minor vulnerabilities. Everybody was really nice from that point on. And you know what, Andrew? I'm glad I stayed. Jeff, Dave are some of my original mentors in application security. You are as well. And now like 15 years later, now we're working together on projects like ASVS, Top 10, Active Controls, and a whole bunch of other projects. And to me, that's like my OWASP, right? That's my OWASP is the technical contributors who are collaborating on projects or using projects like OWASP Zap. And by the way, Simon, Zap's one of the original real flagship useful projects. I'll make a deal with you, Simon. If you sing for me on this podcast, I'll start using Zap as my teaching tool. But anyways, that's my story. And I'm glad I stuck around because I have learned a lot from the community. It's made me a better developer, and I love the community for it. All right, that's my
Making deals with people while live streaming, that puts the O in OWASP. Everyone knows. Sorry, that was a bad joke. Okay. So yeah, Katy. Learning experiences.
Okay, so for me, probably joining the OWASP, the most beneficial thing was meeting people. So just from discussing and meeting people, I've learned so much more than I would have done during a normal job. And I've started actually learning, participating in projects, and then implementing into the daily job what I was learning from speaking with great people like Jim Burt, Andrew. So this was what was helped me a lot to actually increase my security knowledge and then apply it into what I was doing on a daily basis.
Awesome. And Simon, any thoughts on learning experiences?
Yeah, well, I'm going to back up what everyone else has been saying. It's about the people you meet. And I think, I've met a lot of people, often through conferences. The very first OWASP conference I attended, I was asked to speak about Zap. And at that stage, I was a developer. I'd never even been to a developer conference, let alone a security one. I was thinking, how am I going to have the cheek to come to a security conference and talk to security people about a security tool? But I go for things, and that's one thing. So okay, I'll try it out, and it seemed to go down rather well. I was in Dublin, and then somebody came up to me and said, "That was great. Would you like to come and give the same talk in America?" And I was like, "Look, the boss paid for me to fly from Manchester to Dublin. There's no way he'll pay for me to fly to America." I was like, "That's okay. We'll cover that." Really? And the hotels? Yep, all of that. Okay, this is starting to sound interesting. So that's how I got started. Really. That's when I started talking about Zap and presenting at different conferences. But, I think it is the hallway track, as it's called, where you just meet people and chat to them, whether they're really experienced security people or people are completely new. I like, when I go to conference, try and talk to everyone I can. It's great to talk to people who are new to security, find out what their concerns are. And actually, we at Zap, we do a lot of work with students. So we've taken part in the Google Summer of Code numerous times. We also mentor students outside of that. And it's great talking to them. We actually learn, I always find I learn a lot from students. They've got a different perspective and it's great. So it doesn't matter whether people are really experienced or completely new to the field, you're always learning things. So that's what I like, but yeah, it's the people. And, I count a lot of people in OWASP, and particularly in the Zap team, as my friends now.
Awesome. So relatable, yeah. So true about the people in this community. Awesome. So Liz.
I have actually a different take on your question. Let me read it. What are some noteworthy experiences, learning opportunities you've had from working with your collaborators on OWASP project? So I read it about collaborators more. I'm sorry, I apologize. Different take on the things. Definitely, I would side with all of you about OWASP is more about people, right? But with regards to collaborators, my project doesn't have any collaborators because I'm a ruthless leader, right? It's just too soon to have to bring more people in the project and make it, instead of 1 or 2 people, it's just like a bloated project with 10 people collaborating and arguing over little things. So I think I'm going to have collaborators in my project when I deliver, I produce more deliverables like I do when I'll do templates, when I do scripts, when it's going to be more grown, probably heading from lab to flagship. On the other hand, anybody can collaborate with me on my project. If you don't like something about OVMG, you can post it on my GitHub. You can write me, you can ask me any questions. That would be a feedback coming from audience that read the guide and said, okay, so we agree with something or do more like this. So that would be including everybody into working on my project, and it's obviously going to be credited. But Jim posted a couple of times that I deeply, profoundly agree with him that, OWASP as a project, OWASP community would benefit with a kind of lean type projects where several leaders or one leader delivers a project, and not many people trying to collaborate on the same thing, because it would be difficult to manage for me at this stage. And about what I learned, obviously, I learned how to work with, not how to work with people. I kind of knew how to work with people. It wouldn't be fair. But I learned a lot about other leaders. And it's amazing to have this opportunity. Thank you, Zoe, for letting me speak among all those. For instance, Jim Manico was highly publicized in the CBK CISSP. So like almost in every chapter mentioned his project and his name. And I met the guy at work who said, I've seen Simon. I've been at Simon's presentation. It was 3 years ago. For that dude, it was a mind-blowing experience. So if you can manage to create a project at OWASP and deliver something, you could be invited at the panel and collaborate with people and learn something from them, like at this level. For me, it's just mind-blowing, outstanding. I yield my time.
Cool. Awesome. Very much great points about collaboration. I've learned so much. I haven't learned as much anywhere else as, and really anything OWASP and just getting involved in the projects and community, knowing the best and the brightest and the kindest. Cool. So and what diverse skills are needed to make an OWASP project happen? And, both in general and your project specifically.
So I'll take that. I'm going to riff on Liz's previous answer. And one of those things that I've noticed that makes a successful project is, yes, you need to collaborate, but sometimes you need to be a tastemaker and push. I think one of the things that I've been involved in both unsuccessful and successful projects in OWASP, and I'll talk about the negative ones first. The developer guide was initially successful, but towards the end of the OWASP Developer Guide 2.0 release, the number of contributors just dwindled down to nothing. And it was very frustrating because I was putting in a lot of work. It took nearly 18 months. And, we went from an 80-page developer guide to a 280-page developer guide, and almost a complete rewrite. So we started out with around 10 contributors, but by the end it was just me and a couple of others. But at the very end, I got contributions from people like Michael Howard, one of the guys in software security back in the mid-2000s on the buffer overflow chapter, and my faith in the community was restored. And quite frankly, we need to listen to the community. As the leader of the OWASP Top 10, which is one of the flagship projects and is well known, the community really cares about this project. And sometimes they show that care in a very negative way. And quite frankly, that was what happened in 2017. And so part of what my job was in 2017 was to rebuild the community around the project and make sure that we were sort of addressing some of the constructive criticisms and absolutely tearing a new one in the people who are being extremely negative. And for what it's worth, one of the people who were the strongest, folks against the previous, original release of the OWASP Top 10 2017, provided us the most constructive criticism, and now he's a co-leader, and he's actually produced some of the best data science we've actually had on the project in its entire history, and it made it a much stronger project. So accept constructive criticism gladly, work with people who have a different view, but fundamentally, when people are being toxic, they need to leave. And quite frankly, the toxicity of some of the community really frustrates me, and I don't give them the time of day. I generally don't respond to that. But fundamentally, I try to look at the underlying issue and see if it's got a valid underlying issue that needs to be addressed, but without the toxicity. But in the most part, that's not the way it works. But working with my co-leaders, I try to run things as a consensus rather than a solid, benign dictator. And sometimes that means that we end up having arguments that drag on for months, and sometimes a decision just has to be made. Knowing when to make that decision is really important. And the last part is, I have depression. And what that means is that sometimes I struggle to get out of bed. Often I get burnt out on my projects and I need a little time away from them. And sometimes this means that nothing happens in the project. As a project leader, it's your responsibility to make sure that there are multiple people to pick up the stones and keep things moving along, even if you can't contribute for work, life, or some sort of other reason. There's so many times when projects have died on the vine, and I think the developer guide is an example of this, where I just didn't have the energy to work on it for such a long time, and it just lost its momentum. I've learned that lesson, and now I have some really dynamic co-leaders in both the ASVS with Josh Grossman, Jim, and my co-leaders in the OWASP top 10 to help pick up when I can't do it. And I think that's a really important thing, is to rely upon your co-leaders to help during times when real life intrudes.
That is really well said. Definitely something I think many of us involved in the OWASP have experienced about like positive collaborative energy. Very well said. So whoever wants to go next, why not Katy?
Okay. So when it comes to projects, I think we are looking, like Andrew said, we are looking to the community to actually give back their experience knowledge and share their experience knowledge to the project. Sometimes it becomes a little bit difficult because some people, how to say, are a little bit more insistent on their opinion, and that's when it comes. We need a good balance between trying to identify what exactly they are looking for to add to the project, what they are, if it is a genuine improvement, or sometimes some of them might try to add some vendor suggestions as well, and that's something that we need to look for to screen for and exclude them in the end.
Makes sense. And vendor neutrality. Cool. Simon?
Sure. So I've worked on quite a few commercial tools in the past. And to be honest, working on a open source tool, you actually need the same skills. The only problem is you don't have a company behind you. So you need to be able to do design, you need to be able to do coding, you need to be able to do QA, documentation, sales, marketing, the lot. And typically the people who want to get involved in tools projects, skill set is usually development and coding. So it's interesting and challenging to learn the other skills. Communication is absolutely key because you need to communicate amongst your the people who are working on the project, but also with the community, and to make sure that the community is a healthy community, doesn't become toxic. And I think we've done pretty well within ZAP to make sure that if anything inappropriate is said in any of the lists, it gets jumped on very quickly. We haven't had much problem with that, but I think we've kind of set that very early on. And we don't tend to have problems making decisions. I think myself, Rick and Ricardo have very similar views on what we need to do. We usually have problems finding enough people to do the work. There's a million things we'd like to do. So that is a real problem. You need patience because it's very easy to, we see people joining one of the ZAP groups and almost being quite aggressive when they're asking questions, and you've got to realize that these people are often developers who are completely new to security. They didn't want to get involved. They've just been told to sort some problems out, and they're frustrated. They don't understand what's going on. They don't understand what they have to do. So you need to have patience with people. You need to, if people become too unreasonable, that's fine. We can deal with those. But you have to be understanding of people, understanding that people might be having a tough time, and to try to respond appropriately at all times. And perseverance. I think there's so many open source projects, not just OWASP ones, which die, and they die because people get bored. And maybe I like getting stuck into something, and the people we have who work on ZAP now, the core team, I think we all like working solidly and just sticking with something and just making it better. And if you persevere at something, it is the kind of tortoise and hare thing. It's the if you just keep at it and keep on improving things gradually, then you can win the race in the end. So that's my take.
That's very well said. Yeah, and I've gotten a lot of help from some volunteers, for things like, some Git migration related issues and everything in the past. The community has helped to. By the way, Harold Blankenship is like a god for what he does. what everyone does, including staff, is absolutely incredible. Really amazing. Yeah, so I guess next is Liz. Uh-oh. Do we?
Hold on. I can do that. Yes. Sorry.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Too much security controls all over my screens and everything ruined me a little bit. So your question is about what skills would be needed, right?
Yeah.
I agree with everything above. Paramount to be a marketer, coder, and to communicate and to be a leader. So when I started 2018, I thought, oh, I can do it in 1 month. So I released my OVMG, and it's still, by the way, it should be worked on to distill the language, to put nice graphics to that, to release templates. So should big work ahead of me, right? So 2 years passed since the point I decided that I'm going to release OWASP Vulnerability Management Guide. And it's not a coding, right? It's just how to work with people and processes. So it's about how to solve some complex and unsolvable and difficult issues at work while you find in vulnerabilities in code and network and in all the assets you can imagine, right? I would say persistence and perseverance and having a very much thick skin would be super helpful if you have those. And if you can go and go and go and go. So life happens, as you see, like a poster with PT exercises behind me. So it's for a reason. Sometimes we have health issues. So I suffered from back pain for almost 2 years. So it takes time out of me writing something worthwhile to present to the community, because I can't do, I'm sorry, I can't do both. I try, but never happen. Also, I have a full-time job and I have a family, 3 kids. So yeah, life is tough, but if you kind of try to contribute a little bit of time and be persistent and keep hoping that you can deliver better, and try to also, I try to stay out of my own bubble. So, okay, so I wrote something, time passes by, like 5 days. So let me review that. Does it make sense? Would it make sense to other people? Do I have any, does it logically connect from one point to another? Would I be able to deliver and show that is a consistent process? Asking yourself questions like that, be critical about your work, and not being afraid of putting yourself out there. That's my take.
Well said. Very well said. And what about you, Jim? Uh-oh. Where'd he go?
I'm here. Zoe, can you repeat the question that we're on for me?
Yes. Oh, and howdy. What diverse kinds of skills are needed to make an OWASP project happen? And feel free to answer both, specifically to your project or your several projects, and also in general, what really makes this happen.
One of my favorite kinds of projects is actually kind of obscure. It's a project where we're building a computer programming library that's used for some defensive purpose. In the Java ecosystem, where I have more experience, I've been a project manager to other programmers who are experts at a certain thing. Like, for example, Jeff Ikonowski built a project called the OWASP Java Encoder Project. Mike Samuel wrote a project called the OWASP HTML Sanitizer. And these are tools used to do cross-site scripting defense in the Java programming language for older frameworks especially. And these are like really intricate tools, though, that require a huge amount of expertise. So for this kind of project, I'm looking for like 1 or 2 master developers. That's not a good word. Let's use a better word. I'm looking for 1 or 2 extremely senior and experienced developers who understand application security and a really deep aspect of Java programming language, and a very deep aspect to web security, and to actually build something that another developer could use in production to provide defense. Guess what? There are very few developers that I would depend upon to do that. So for these kind of projects, a computer programming defense library, ESAPI, for example, it has Kevin Wall and other senior people working on that. But so that's one project. Another kind of project would be like a documentation project. Like Katy and I and Jim Bird work on the OWASP Proactive Control project. Andrew works on ASVS standard and the OWASP ASVS Application Security Verification Standard. What I like about that, Andrew, is over time, different members of leadership put a lot of effort in. Like early on, we have like Babursky and Jeff and Dave putting a lot of effort in. Later on, you and Daniel Cuthbert put massive effort in. Josh Grossman and a few others were kind of leading the charge. I'm assisting with a few versions as well. So like as the documentation project matures, different groups of people with different perspectives help manage that. And I enjoy those projects a lot as well. These are very different, looking for different kinds of volunteer, different levels of expertise. Last note, what I like about what Simon does is Simon's got a whole community. Now, ZAP is not like some small little library that I want one person to work on. ZAP is like a full-fledged, near enterprise class web security scanning and assessment tool. And there's a huge number of people working on it of all different skill levels. And Simon's, really good at managing that with his team. Now that shows an extraordinary level of project maturity. This is why it's one of our flagship projects. And I like that, Simon. I think that should be almost part of a requirement for a flagship, is that there's a significant community built around that project. I digress. There you go.
That's well said. Yeah, ZAP is definitely unique, and thinking like just the thought of that coming from all volunteers is absolutely incredible, and also all the in-depth standardizations and guidelines as well. So one thing, since we have some time, I wanted to so I know Simon and a few others came up with a project integration. So if you want to talk a little bit on that, Simon, that'd be great, because I was really excited to see that.
Oh, is that one of the recent things? So it's not something it's something I've always wanted to see. I do think that one of the things we don't do very well with at OWASP is actually integration between our own projects. We tend to have projects as standalone, and even when they could integrate well, they often don't. And I understand why. It's because the project leaders tend to focus on their own projects, and I'm just as guilty of doing that as anyone else. But I do think as an organization, we're missing a trick there. And there's something simple like the OWASP testing guide. We should have a much more integration with ZAP, the OWASP testing guide, and vice versa, without making testing guides ZAP specific, which it shouldn't be. But we should make it, we often get people on the ZAP user group saying, well, how do I test for this particular type of vulnerability manually? We can't cover all those things in ZAP, and we shouldn't have to. That's what the testing guide is there for, and that's so we're always pointing people over there, but we could easily have much better integration there. So I think that's something we need to focus on, but it's difficult because obviously when you have one project leader, people focusing on their own project, you can focus on these things, but focusing on a whole range of projects and how to get them working well together, that's hard, and I don't think we've managed to get that working well yet.
So
I think we're doing a better job, but yes, Andrew, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So Simon, we do refer to you in the OWASP Top 10, and I'm pretty sure that you've got at least a few links in the ASVS, but I was actually on the Open Security Summit yesterday, and one of the things that we want to do is actually get through a DevSecOps program, or a project that will be sort of like a meta project for OWASP. And part of one of those sub-projects is an ASVS test cases, and I think we should write Zest scripts to help test them in a generic way, so people can use them and adapt them to their own integration tests, starting with the ASVS level 1. So we're about to kick that one off. So yes, and absolutely, the OWASP Top 10 2020 we should absolutely be saying this is what we mean and this is how you would test it, and then link to that same project. Having these deep integrations between the various things, the testing guide would be like a version 5 of that was aligned with the ASVS. It's a match made in heaven.
And count me in for that integration project, because I'll definitely want to get involved and help as much as I can, because I think one thing I've been thinking recently is, particularly with tools, tools are not solutions, and Zap isn't a solution, it's very much a tool, and we get people wanting to build it into their own environments, and as an open source project we can't do that. We don't have the people, the amount of effort it would require to build into all of the different potential integrations, but if we can have a more solutions view which ties different OWASP projects together, I think that would be very powerful and very useful to the industry.
Yeah,
indeed. Awesome. So any, I guess, advice for someone new to the community, how to understand it, whether it be from a project perspective or like a high level community perspective, where they don't necessarily know where they want to go or what kind of project they would want to get involved with, because, chances are they wouldn't really know what would be required in order to kind of make those decisions, but, they're eager to help.
Zoe, let me take that one first, Zoe, if I may.
Yeah.
And this is, I get this question a lot from professionals of a lot of different levels, right? And the question is, like, I really don't know what I want to do or where to go at OWASP, but I want to contribute in some way, and I'm new at application security. What should I do? And I think that's a great question, and the answer is study. So the answer is to go pick up the OWASP Top 10, pick up the proactive controls, pick up the cheat sheet series, and while you're doing cheat sheet series, do it in GitHub and give us some edits along the way, even as a new reader. That's always helpful. Read the ASVS standard and then go read them all again, and then go read them again. I recommend for each major document that you want to absorb to read it 3 times. Very famous intellectual Marie von Svant suggested that many years ago about how she learns to read technical documents. So you're next, Simon, but the key is study. For example, if you suppose you use Zap, and you're a Zap user, and you're a programmer, you're like, I want to help program Zap. Well, like any new programming project, go and read source code and really understand the inner workings of it, and suddenly your ability to lend support to the project goes up a lot. Now, Zoe, suppose you're not a programmer, and it's taking and some of these docs are hard to read. What can you do? Well, you can ask a lot of questions. Be unshy. Hit some of the technical lists and ask questions, even basic ones. Believe me, asking basic questions, there's a lot of AppSec people who would love to opine on the answers. You'll get a lot of answers. So study, look at the code of projects you want to contribute to, or ask a lot of questions as you're reading these documents. But the key is you got to put some effort in, and for yourself. I'm not saying for us, for yourself. If you want to really learn about application security, be able to participate in OWASP and really help more, I think that's reading, study, the technical investigation, asking questions. And I think the more you learn from OWASP material, the more you'll find out what you like, and the more of spreading application security.
That makes a lot of sense. I also think going along those lines, I think, those with the development, those who ask that question with development experience, I try to suggest that. I think a lot of people kind of get uncomfortable with the idea of just explore. There's no way to know offhand. It's like they want some sort of certainty. But that really is the answer. That really is the answer. Just go and make sure you understand, kind of take it back to kind of contextualize it from what you're doing on other projects during the day, etc., and apply it on your own and continue to do so iteratively. And then I think that's the best way. Sorry, Simon?
Yeah, I agree with what's been said, but I know one of the reasons I started coding, hacking on Paros and then Zap is because I learned better that way. And I did, definitely read up there on the OWASP top 10 and things like that. But I don't really learn best when I'm reading. I learn best when I'm coding. And if you're new and want to get involved in a project like Zap, you don't actually need to understand the whole Zap code base. It's big and it's huge and sprawling. When I started with Paros, there was the first thing that annoyed me was there was a right-click option in, it was either the history or the sites tree, one and not the other, where you could actually open the request in the manual request editor. You could do it on one and not the other, and that annoyed me. So I kind of thought, well, I'm a Java developer. I pulled it into Eclipse. I found the bit of code for the for that right-click option. I copied it to another place and got it working. And I didn't understand any of the rest of the code base, but from just copying a right-click option to a different window, I suddenly felt, well, actually, I've made it a bit better, and this is quite fun. So don't feel you have to understand everything before you get stuck in. You can learn by doing, and that's what I do. And Zap was always intended to be, well, one, a way for me to learn, but another, a way for other people to learn. And it was always supposed to be a community tool. So it's great if you're a developer wanting to learn about security. It's also great if you're a security person wanting to learn about development. And we've had a lot of really great contributions from students. So students who are often working things like Google Summer of Code, Mozilla Winter Security, those kind of events. And these are people who are don't have the same level of experience as professional developers or professional security people, but they've contributed some of the major Zap features. I've got all of the session handling, the Ajax Spider, WebSocket handling. All of these things were done by students. So you can be somebody who's completely new to the industry and you can make significant contributions. And on the Zap, on zaproxy.org, we've got a page which is the shows all the contributions that students have made. And I had great fun going through, finding out all the latest LinkedIn addresses for the students. And so many of them are now working in the industry, whether in security or development. And, I'm just really proud that we've been part of their journey to get them into the industry in the Zap team.
And Simon, I really agree with you when it comes to like a coding project. I learn about a project, a software project by digging in and adding features to it. Absolutely. For the documentation projects like ASVS in particular, it really helps if someone has taken the time and read the standard several times so they understand the requirements and where their new ideas fit in and to avoid duplication and to understand the big picture well. So like for the OWASP top 10, for ASVS and the cheat sheet series, and this is something I really enjoy doing. I think one of my main contributions is keeping an eye on a lot of those projects. And I do see a large community of people who read and consume that content to help learn about application security topics. And I agree with you. I learned more about application security by getting my hands dirty and playing with defensive code to solve problems. But these documentation projects still have mammoth number of views and mammoth number of people who read and consume them. And so a little less hands-on coding, a little more, please read the document several times before contributing, I think is a good way to go with those projects.
So
Makes sense.
I just wanted to sort of highlight, because now on GitHub, it's easy enough to provide us pull requests, but to get them merged, you need to be consistent with our existing project in both voice, content, and purpose. The ASVS was always designed to be an 80-20 type of checklist, so having every single control in there is never going to be something that we'd accept. But I think it's incumbent upon us as project leaders to make some of the issues that are outstanding those that can be done as an entry-level task for the project. And I know Simon's project has that, and it's a really good way of getting people starting to get involved with coding. And I think with the ASVS and the OWASP top 10, we've been asked many times, how do I start helping you? Right now we need data. Once we've got data, well, how do we get people to help us? Because generally we analyze the data and then we write the thing. So getting project leaders to be better at accepting entry-level contributions without gatekeeping is, I think, a very important aspect of any particular project leader.
I agree, Andrew, but beginners have to do work. Like if a beginner wants help with ASVS, hey, how do I really help here? A good first answer is, have you read ASVS yet? They're like, no, I haven't read it yet. I heard about it from friends. Okay, stop. Go read ASVS. Go read it twice. Read it carefully, and then come back and ask questions. And we'll spend time answering your questions. And once you've read it and interacted with our team, guess what? You're going to be way more, first of all, you'll understand it better. The process of reading it 1, 2, 3 times is a discipline. But if you follow that discipline, even as a beginner, it really accelerates your ability to contribute and modify and absorb that document. So I don't want, the point I'm trying to make is I'm being a bit more strict than Simon and Andrew. I'm a professor and I'm a strict one. So when I have a new contributor or a new zealous person who wants to help, I love it. But I want to see them do some work where go read the document. And if someone's like, hey, Jim, I already read the document. I'm like, all right, then tell me this and that. They're like, oh, this means, and I'm like, oh, you have read the document. You're not kidding around. Then I'm going to spend more time like getting on the phone with that person and helping them out. And as a project leader, really supporting that beginner to make sure they understand and how to contribute. But Andrew, what if a beginner shows up, they really want to contribute, but they're not really willing to do any groundwork? Or they're like, Simon, I want to fix a feature. Can you help me fix the feature? And you're like, well, have you looked at the code base? No, I haven't. Can you please like walk me through it and hold my hand and help me fix this feature? And maybe you're going to do that, Simon. You're a better person than I am. But I'm like, I'll even say, go read these 7 classes first. I'm not going to hold your hand. I'll point in the right direction, but go set the IDE up, get your development environment set up. And if you're stuck, let me know. But even a beginner, I don't want to excuse the footwork and the discipline and the work they have to do to really be a good contributor. Because what I'm trying to avoid is a contributor who really wants to help, doesn't want to do any work, and suddenly every step of the way I'm helping them, and it's suddenly less of a help and more of a burden. And I'm okay to do that to some degree, but that doesn't scale as a project leader. So beginners, do your groundwork. Get some work done. You'll learn. You'll help us more. It's a better way to volunteer, in my opinion.
So I just want to riff about that one more time. To my mind, it's consistent help. If someone just comes in, dumps a PR, we never hear from them again, I don't want that sort of help. That's not very useful. Someone who comes and gives me increasing levels of help over a period of time can become a contributor, and those who are consistently great at it become co-leaders like Josh did.
Absolutely.
I want to hear from Liz and Katy, because I think we haven't heard enough from them on this topic, and I think it's an important topic.
And they both have amazing projects, yeah.
Yes, I think it is important, like Jim said, to when people are looking to join a particular project, to know about that project and if they've used it. So when I'm talking about a documentation project, if they actually have tried to think of, okay, how would that fit into my own work development cycle or whatever type of work they are doing, I think that's where the contribution is even more valuable, because they come with an experience from being a user of that project, and that helps us a lot as well.
I think it's well said, and I agree with everybody at some part. I agree with Simon, I agree with Jim, and most of all, I agree with Andrew. It's consistency that would makes a better contributor, because if you produce one good idea once and you let me to deliver this idea, that's not going to work for my project or any project at this matter. I believe, Zoe, can you repeat your question actually?
Just in general, like what does it take to be a contributor? How do you suggest that someone gets started if they say they want to help? especially, you know, my initial question was like a mentee who knows they want to get involved with OWASP and AppSec, but they don't necessarily know how. I usually just direct them toward the Slack channel and say, get involved with, you know, some of the project Slack channels, see what sticks, then go look at their GitHub and see where you want to contribute what. But I want to get your specific feedback as private project leaders, and they've given some great advice so far.
That's where I would agree with Simon and Jim at the same time. So first of all, go study, go read, go see, and then try to do it on your own. That's where probably Simon's approach comes in, and see what you can do, how you can actually improve it and produce some kind of results. But I think so I consider myself as sort of not senior yet in information security. That's how I started. I studied, I read a lot. I read a lot of the documentation projects that's been mentioned here. I tried to implement them at work. So that was my first contribution to community. So find something worthwhile on the OWASP project. And OWASP has a lot of projects. Try to implement it, see what kind of questions that would may raise in you, and try to document your process, revise it, see what you might done wrong, and then start asking questions and writing to project leaders. Sometimes it's really difficult to get back to, if you ask me something, I might get back or never get back to you. I apologize for that, but it is what it is. And especially if it's something that I already explained on my project's front page. So you have to read better, you have to try to implement it. By implementing some fundamentals of OWASP projects, you would contribute way more to the security community. That's my take.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah, so having like some specific knowledge or like of what, or understanding of what you want is important. I personally took the reverse approach. I just kind of fell in love with the community and being security conscious in every development project, etc. But then I just kind of very recently got more specific and involved in threat modeling related projects. So yeah, I mean, it takes a while to kind of learn where you want to help, and you know, what you can contribute and how much time, because again, you want to be able to contribute a substantial amount of time. And I'm glad that, you know, you guys all shared your perspective on that. And so I think, yeah, so we're out of time as far as the scheduled amount. So any kind of like closing words on any of your part? Thank you all for sharing your wisdom.
I want to apologize to Simon. About 5 years ago, I said I'd do the DS store analyzer for Zap, and I coded it for about 30 minutes, and I thought, yeah, and now I don't have any Macs, so I can't even finish it. I apologize, Simon, I really do. You need to allocate that task to someone else.
Well, it's if anyone's watching and wants to take it on, you know, the thing is with Zap, there's always a million things to do. So if you do fancy contributing, just get in touch. You know, I'm very happy to talk to anyone who wants to get involved, and we can discuss and work out where you can do things, because always things to do, not just coding as well. So,
yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Good stuff. So I guess this is a wrap. Everyone have some great ideas. Feel free to reach out to any of these project leaders, and have a great weekend.
No worries. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
yeah,
Okay,
a lot
thanks.
for
Bye-bye.
organising.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you again. Howdy, Jim. Thanks so much again, Katie. Oh, yeah, thanks so much again, Katie. This was awesome.